sort of in the same theme of violence. In some ways, I guess you could say that this movie is almost equally violent to Raise in some areas.
It blows it out of the water, though. Like, let's be real. Like, if you're gonna watch one of these movies, I totally suggest you watch Funny Games, just because it is like, it's the more polished piece.
Yeah. And
it deals with these themes very, very well.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good way of summarizing it. So, yeah, it was 2008's Funny Games. It's an American remake by the same director. I don't know how to say his name. It's like Michel.
He's Austrian.
Haneke or Mike? Is it Michael or?
It might be like Mikhail.
I can't even. I'll throw his name up right here, and you guys can figure out how to pronounce it because I have no clue. But I tried to find an interview where like he says his name, and
he never does.
He never does.
He doesn't have to introduce himself.
Exactly. Yeah, but he's done a lot of great movies. Benny's Video, 71 Fragments of a Chronology of Chance. I think most famously he did Amour back in the early 2010s.
Oh yeah.
But this is my favorite movie of his. He did another one recently called Happy End, I think. But yeah, like I said, the Funny Games is easily my favorite thing that he's done. Mm-hmm. And it's a remake of a movie that he had done already in Austria, like you said, in 1997 or 98, I think he did this as like an independent Austrian film, and then 10 years later he remade the version we're talking about with, I think it's the exact same set built from scratch.
Really?
The same plot. Yeah, I think because I remember hearing something that like they had the blueprints for the original house, and then they just built a new house.
Just like, fuck it.
With the same specifications, yeah. But, yeah, so it's really the only difference is that it's an American cast, and nothing's really changed plot-wise. In some cases, it's the exact same shots and framing, yeah. So I didn't make her watch both of them for reference, but did you watch both?
No, I did watch I did look at screenshots just to compare, like, the cast early on.
Okay.
And like I said, I mentioned before we had this podcast that I was like, oh, I could see why the American version, I wouldn't say even did better, but like appealed to us more was because of that hyper suburbia thing that they had going on with the cast. And
that was my main reason for recommending that over the Austrian version, because I'm never afraid to recommend something with subtitles, but I think that one thing that the American version has going for it way more than the Austrian one is that from a purely like visual standpoint, it's way more like polished. The whites are much whiter, everything looks a lot cleaner, and that kind of, I think, plays very heavily into that theme of, like, because the main point that movie, I feel, is trying to communicate is that we're a society that relishes violence to an extent in our
But we
media.
want to save face.
Hey, we want it, yeah, so I think that the fact that everything was, like, clean and polished and there's all these, like, horrible things happening was kind of a nice way of making that theme even more prevalent, so... But yeah, so what did you think of Funny
it was
Games?
So much...
Well, actually, here, sorry. I've gone on a tangent. I didn't mean to interrupt. So, Funny Games, it's rich family goes to a vacation house on a lake. These two weird dudes show up and hold them captive and torture them, basically. And they got to escape. So, now, sorry, what did you think of Funny Games?
Eggs.
Eggs.
Eggs is what I thought. Eggs to 100. No, it was... It was very, very well done. I could see... it was really cool because I could see a lot of, like I mentioned earlier, The Weeknd. I could see, like, a very Jean-Luc Godard in his shot composition with, like, just, like, that random piece of the house, like, that random, like, it's like a quilt on the wall, and, like, the random shot of, like, them driving. First, when I started watching it, I thought it was very alienating at first with them talking about classical music, but I think they did that on purpose to kind of, like, I didn't want to be like, oh my god, white people. Right. But I think that's kind of like the vibe they wanted to get. And I think it's very interesting, like, looking back on it, how, like, the first incident was, my friends are acting strange. And, like, that incident, I was like, oh, I'm like, that is weird that their friends are acting strange. But, like, I didn't think about it until, like, the very, very end. And you're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
You're like, I understand what was happening. Like, I like that moment where it was very well thought. There was a line. It was that red line he had going on.
Yeah.
And it was very, very, very fun. And, like, meeting the boys, I know one was called Paul for sure, but the other one, he was like Tom, then he was like Peter, and then he just kept calling him Tubby, which I felt bad.
Yeah.
But, like, they were very interesting, and, like, I thought it was so funny because they made me think of, like, I was like, the guy who wrote Hobo in with a Shotgun definitely watched this movie and definitely stole fucking Slick and whatever his name was from these two boys, like, 1,000%. And then, like, the whole, the games later on that they play with the family, I saw, like, that tie to, like, maybe, like, that inspired, like, Sacred of a Killing Deer with, like, that whole, like, sort of living room torture dungeon setting.
Yeah. It's a fantastic movie, and like you said, the two villains, I think that's another reason why I like the American version more, is that they come across way more twisted, and they fit way more, and I guess that's just probably like a cultural difference.
Our lens.
It's like you just have these like two tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed boys who are like in like these white polos, and they're like, "Oh man, these new golf clubs are great." I like. It's like it goes with that theme of like high class, but like deep down, we're all kind of have these like twisted notions and ideas, and they're performing. I think especially Michael Pitt, like the main guy who like he breaks the fourth wall. He breaks the fourth wall all the time. Yeah, he was easily, I think, my favorite performance in that movie. I hated him so much.
He was so. I loved them. I really did. Like, I was very charmed by them. I hated, like, they were the kings of gaslighting. Like, their dialogue made me so anxious. Like, I was like, when they were like, we just wanted eggs, like, they were just gaslighting the shit out of her, and then, like, she was like, will you please just throw them out? And he was like, what do you mean? Like, the husband. Like, all of their...
Even before, that's, like, before anything even bad happens.
It was just like... so much gaslighting, though, and, like, you feel, you know, nothing wrong has happened, but, like, you feel like something wrong is happening, and you know something wrong is happening, because, like, they don't know these people, but they're just... And you could tell because, like, the boys are looking around and, like... It's, like, this very, like... You're like, they're gonna do something, but they keep talking about these eggs. They keep just talking about these damn eggs.
Yeah, it's very...
It's so funny.
It's funny, but it's, like you said, it's very unsettling, and it goes out of its way to, like, really, like, from very early on, make you unsettled through, like, the... Because it starts off, like you said, so innocent of just like, hey, the neighbors ran out of eggs, can we borrow some? Yeah. And then it's like, oh, I broke these eggs, can I have some more? Or, oh, I'm so sorry, I dropped your only cell phone in the water. Like, and with each one, you're like, I mean, going into it, I knew, like, okay, bad things are going to happen to this family, but like, it's just the way that they do it is like so, and I think that, especially in this movie, but in his movies in general, he really likes to make things painfully slow and drawn out. I think very much to the aid of this movie, because everything happens almost in real time, and like you said, it makes you feel very anxious.
Does it really? I didn't notice that.
Like, that
it almost lined up with, like...
I thought so, because it's very, like, especially the nighttime. I mean, there's a little bit of a jump when we get towards the end after, like, the prayer scene. Yeah. There's a jump from there to the end of the movie, but not much. Yeah.
That was a clear... We knew that was going to probably happen. Like, a jump in time was going to happen sometime.
Well, so. I mean, I think they literally have a jump in time, but we won't spoil that yet.
No, that's the only scene I knew from the movie, actually, because I watched, like, top 10. So I knew that was, like, the setup sort of thing, but that was all I knew going in, sort of.
Well, actually, I feel like we've given a good enough summary. Let's jump into that. So, yeah, spoilers if you haven't seen either Funny Games, check that out. I don't remember how you can watch it. I had a DVD of it, but I'm sure it has to be available on, like, Prime or... something like that.
I forgot. I think actually you might have to buy it. I don't think it is on any streaming services.
Really?
I think I saw a copy of it on Daily Motion, but it was in French, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay.
Because I was curious to see if there was, like, maybe some alternative way, like someone had it up, like, easy to click on.
Yeah.
But I was very unsuccessful with that. A lot of it was dubbing, because I did find actually another version, but it was the American one with an Austrian dub over it. It was very meta.
It's so pointless.
Yeah, it was very meta.
But yeah, no, if you can find a copy of Funny Games, you should definitely watch it. You definitely have to be I guess kind of like open-minded, like to a lot of like what it's trying to say, to like really enjoy it, because it's a movie that kind of goes out of its way to make you mad and irritate you, and that's not everyone's cup of tea. But if you can stand that, then you should definitely check it out. But yeah, so what you said that you had seen that scene before with the remote.
Yeah, the
so
infamous.
What was your like initial? Well, I mean, I guess you didn't really have much of an initial take because you didn't have the context of what came before. But what I guess now that you have the context of seeing the movie and then that scene on top of it, what was your opinion of that?
I thought it was. See, they laid the groundwork beforehand because I thought so in like the first game they played when they were playing Hot and Cold with the dog.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that game in particular was very, very smart because it showcased him as a director. Because you didn't see him, you just heard him yelling, barking orders at, no pun intended, orders at her, being like hot, cold, hot, and like just watching her like motion around. So like already early on, I knew they were set up as almost like a directing force, and like especially him in particular, he was the driving. Like the one boy was the driving force, while the other boy was like the answers. Mm-hmm. As weird as that sounds, because that's all he basically did was give answers to like why they're doing this, which were very clear. Well, they were very clear. It were just great reasons though, like because we could like
right, yeah.
And I thought it was very fitting. I thought it made a lot of sense, strangely, because like
it's interesting.
It sort of plays on that thing that Final Destination, like you know what it like how you can't escape fate. Mm-hmm. Like even if you escape death this time, you're just gonna die. Like it's gonna happen, and that's sort of like the vibe. It didn't come off as like trying to be like because being like quirky like that and like looking at the camera and stuff wasn't super in at the time, and like wasn't really like something an audience looked for. So I thought it was very, very interesting. Yeah,
I can't think of another movie where I'm sure that exists, but off the top of my head, I can't think of like a movie where like the bad guy is the one who breaks the fourth wall as much, and it's very, like I said, with like it going out of its way to piss you off. Like it's very, everything he says is like the scene that I always show people is that first scene where they're all in the living room. And he's like, let's make a bet that 12 hours from now, you're all going to be dead.
Oh, after they beat they smacked. I thought that was such a beautiful shot with them sitting on that couch and them just like on the other. I don't know what it was like it was a wide too, but it was just so pretty.
Yeah. But like that scene where he does like look over at them and he says to the audience, he's like, who are you betting on? Like, you think they stand a chance? Why do you think that? Like, it's so... we keep on saying the games, like it literally in the title, funny games. It's playful, but in a sadistic way, and it like in an angry way, because like your natural instinct is to root for that family, and I mean they haven't done anything wrong.
No,
so
honestly,
it's literally a case of like this poor family being terrorized.
Besides being like white people,
exactly,
like, obnoxious white,
obnoxious
white people.
But it's. Yeah, so they're both like they're so innocent with like the way they present themselves that it's fun to watch them, but you're really mad at them. Like I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like they're very good at being villains.
They are
in a very unique way.
It was really like just even like the little hints, like when the dog was like barking at them the whole time. Like I thought that was really cool because like it gave you like this unnerving. You're like, I don't know about these guys. You're like, they're kind of weird.
Yeah.
You're like, even though like they haven't really said anything or like they haven't been weird. Like they weren't rude. Mm-hmm. They were honestly, they weren't rude until like the tension started to escalate. Then they just started to gaslight the shit out of Naomi Watts. And it's like that's how I started also calling like the incidents by games, because that's what like they call them games. So like it's kind of hard to not like get caught up in that.
Right.
And I think like one of the most masterful games in that was like the undressing game, because it was just like a multi-level like complete mind like dominating and like manipulation tactic. Like when the husband actually like looked over her and was like, take off your clothes, I'm like, you're a bitch. I'm like, if my boyfriend would do that, I'm like, I'd punch him in the throat. I'm like, I'll take the shotgun now.
But it's just it's so it's painful, but in the best possible way.
Yeah, like this concept of just like saving face, because like there was a moment where like those people, like her friends or whatever, like pulled up on that boat, and she was like, "Yeah, this is Paul, my friend.
We're fine. Yeah.
We're fine. We'll see you later. You want to do drinks? He hurt his knee." Like, just this concept of just trying to save face so hard, like, because he said to her, he's like, "You have the same idea as I." Like, he's like, "We're on the same level, right? Like, what you're gonna do." So he knew she was gonna like. It's very like interesting, like this concept of like, it's not even like a keeping up with the Joneses thing. It's like trying to be like, everything's fine.
Yeah. Beyond like a, hey, we're being held captive, and more like oh no, not this couldn't happen to our family.
Yeah,
like almost like an embarrassment. Like,
it's not like, oh, like my husband's cheating on me. It's like, oh, it's like we're being held captive. Like it's a whole different playing field of like not wanting people to know what's happening. Yeah.
But I guess we kind of drifted away for a little bit from what I was at with the remote.
The remote.
I'll admit when I was on board with them breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah.
And I was rooting for the family the whole time. And
Were you?
Yeah. But even though I loved them, like I was thoroughly expecting, because I watched the American one first, and then I went back and watched the Austrian one when I found out it was like a 1-to-1, and I wanted to see what the differences were.
Yeah.
So the first time I watched it, I didn't know what to expect. So I, up until that point, was thinking this is going to be a thing where it's like, okay, they've been through all this shit, they're finally going to come through, and this is going to be the moment where like they turn things around.
Yeah.
And then so they're playing the game where she has to say. The point is, like, she has to, like, recite a prayer or something.
And then backwards.
And if she can do it successfully, she gets to pick what tool they use to kill her husband. But instead, she just grabs the shotgun and kills one of them.
Yeah.
And then the one who's been breaking the fourth wall the whole time pushes her to the side, grabs a remote control, and literally rewinds the movie.
And it's cool how they do, because he, like... It's not like he's like walking around like his first like knee jerk is like, where's the remote?
Yeah.
Where's the remote? Like he's just asking. It was such a strange, there's another strange thing that stuck out to me, but that was it was odd. Like even though I knew that scene happened, just like, I thought it was going to happen earlier actually too, because I knew that scene was going to happen. I thought it was going to happen right, instead of the little boy dying, I thought that scene was going to happen there. It surprised me when they killed the kid. I was glad they went for it, though, personally.
Yeah. It's definitely, because I think in a movie like this, the more often than not, any other director would have it be like the dad makes a heroic sacrifice, and then the mom and the kid walk, like The Purge or something like that. So I think the fact that the kid is the first victim was a very smart choice, because it flips your ability to predict on its head, and it forces you in like that, like uncharted territory. But on top of that too, it's like it just drives home the point of like how sadistic they are. Like that scene with when the kid runs away and he's in the other house and he finds the gun and he's like, "Go ahead, pull it, Timmy."
That was really good.
And he pulls it and then nothing happens. He goes,
his face. That little boy. You see the face crack of the century.
Oh my god, it's so.
He was so brave, and then he pulled it.
You're right. It's oh my god. I feel like on some level it's like so bad that we're laughing about this, but like it is so. It is so perfect.
It's hard not. There's so much chemistry and like charisma to it. It's really hard. Like I even had a few favorite. There's one quip where he's like, "Don't ruin the carpet," and then when he's like, before that, like when the scene happens, like while the kid's being killed, because they don't show it on screen, which I think is a very good choice. Mm-hmm. I think it keeps the integrity of this film and what he was getting at, strangely. Mm-hmm. But he's like in the kitchen, he's like, "Does anybody want anything?" Like while they're all tied up, and like he's hearing like people screaming, and like he already heard the gunshot go off, and he's like slowly moseys his way like back in, and he's like, "What did you do?"
Or he's like, "Yeah, you're not supposed. You counted wrong." Or I forget what the rules of the game were. It was like you didn't count the right way. You're supposed to go 3, 2, 1 and then do it, not 3, 2 and then do it on one. Like it's
just silly. Like,
yeah, it's silly in like such an evil way. They keep on saying it's silly and sadistic in the best possible way. But yeah, I get again to get back to the remote. I keep on taking us away from that. The first time I watched it, I was not a fan of that. Because I wanted it to be that movie where it's like, okay, we've made a point, and now let's have like the payoff where this family gets away.
Yeah.
And I was really almost uncomfortably mad at the movie at the end of it. I was like, oh, that's a terrible movie. Why would they do it? Like, I was really upset. But then the more I thought of it, I was like, no, that's the best possible way that they could have done it. Like, it gives you that, because his whole thing is like, we're gonna give you, we're giving you hope, but we keep on consistently taking it away.
Yeah.
And it's like, that just drives home the point of like, you can hope all you want, but like, there's literally, it's like you said, they're gonna die. There's no way around it. Like, and it just drives that point home of like, there's nothing you can do to stop these guys.
No, it's very jarring. I'm not gonna lie.
It's inevitable.
Yeah, it's a very jarring scene, and I could see why it would turn people off. I'm unsure how I feel about it I don't think I would personally like wrote it in like that, but I can see. I think it's a bit on the nose, but I can see why he does it too, because he does get a bit more like ambiguous, like like Naomi Watts' death is so anticlimactic. I thought it was, I was like, I snorted a bit and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
It's just literally like, they was like,
because even up to that point, like, I still think like,
I thought she was gonna live.
Yeah,
I did.
There's like the one last glimmer of like, is she gonna get like the fishing knife and cut herself loose?
Yeah.
And then, no.
Or I thought maybe even like one of the boys would fall out, like something, because they're like, oh, it's really slippery, and like you see the knife, and
yeah. And it's just like, what did he even say? It's like, she still had an hour before the bet was
Yeah.
over. He's like, well, I'm hungry. We should have just wrapped this up. But like, it's just, and then ending it like you said with like they go to the next house and they're like, hey, we're staying over at the what's his faces, and they're out of eggs.
We met together.
Like, oh my god, it's just and then when he looks right in the camera and we go to credits, it's such a powerful movie, and
Yeah.
but like I said, frustrating in the best way. Like,
but it
goes out of your way to make you mad, but then when you've had your chance to like cool down, you can like really look at it for what it is and what it's trying to say and appreciate it. I find.
No, I really think it's overall it's a very well polished movie, but the themes of it like is very what stands out to me, like this whole does fictional violence cause actual violence, sort of like correlation, causation, like, because they do have like, after they push her in, they kind of like have this little like philosophical moment, which I think is interesting, when they're like, oh, but if you see it on a movie, is it real? But they're like, yeah, because you're seeing pictures to it, and they're like sort of like not really debating, but just sort of like commentating on like seeing violence and like how real is it, like compare it, like you put like stories of serial killers up, like people love serial killer documentaries, but then like you put the same kind of violence in a movie and some people get upset, like
exactly,
it's sort of
like how many people were ranting and raving about the Ted Bundy tapes, but yet they can't do Saw. You know what I mean? Like, it's, and I mean like, one is like Saw is very like over the top, and
I don't know, I've seen a lot of stuff, so that Saw's a bit more like, it's a bit playful, I think. Like, it tries to, it's like, it tries to be torture porn, but like it tries to mask itself not as torture porn.
Yeah, but like, you get what I mean, where it's like, it's very, the gore in that is very in your face, and like, so it's interesting how, like you said, it's how people, like, if it's one thing to like see someone cutting his foot off to get out of a chain and having like the blood go everywhere, but and people are not okay with that. But yet they're okay with like hearing, oh yeah, Ted Bundy, this one night he broke in and beat this girl to death and then raped her body, like,
or like, here's this school shoot, like the Columbine thing, like, especially like, I thought it was too late later, like very long after, but I think it sort of like still had that, I think that was still in the air, you know what I mean? It was very still fresh in the media, and weirdly enough, like that sort of changed how we look at that sort of stuff. And I think that film like really talked about like does watching violence make us violent?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think it drove home the point that like you can't predict violence.
Yeah.
Like there's no like science to it. Like yeah, we have profilers, yeah, we have law enforcement, yeah, we have like just our own wits about us, but like at the end of the day, people are gonna do what they're gonna do.
Right.
And you could see that because it's a cycle. Like that's what I thought it was so ingenious at the end of the movie.
Yeah,
like
they're literally just going house to house,
house to
down
house
the
to
block.
house. Because like at first you don't realize it. Like I said, like the first incident being like, oh, my friends are acting weird. Like I was like, oh, that's an odd choice to start off on. And then I realized it was so smart because then you realized they did it. They were like the second like that's what I mean. Something, a whole different scene. Like you could only imagine what happened to that family, and then you know what happened, and now it keeps on like that whole imagination.
Mm-hmm. It's just
fun.
Yeah, it's a wonderful movie, and if you can get past the whole it going out of its way to make you mad, it's definitely worth the watch.
It's a ride.
It's hard, like you said, it's hard to find a copy of it, but if you can, then yeah,
more power to you.
More power to you. It's an experience that if you can stick with it, you should definitely have.